Which makes sense, and I've seen that a lot myself. Like I said, in some of the companies that we're involved with. But okay, one thing you mentioned, and I want to bring this up. You said that most companies still pick up the tab for mobile phones for their employees. Now, does that mean it's a changing trend? There's more and more companies not doing that, or what did you mean by that?
Well, it used to be that when you went into a business, certain things were expected from an employee perspective. You got a laptop, you got a cell phone, and the company, paid for those things. In the cellular industry, that's referred to as a corporate liable account, which means the corporation owns the phone, they own the number, and they're going to pay for it. There are terms out there in a evolution called BYOD, which stands for Bring Your Own Device, or individual liability, which is basically that the employee will get to dictate who their carrier is. More importantly, they'll get to dictate what type of phone they're going to have because ultimately they're paying for it and not the corporation. And some companies are allowing their employees to go in that direction. Now, there are drawbacks to the bring your own device type of model in that a properly managed and well-tailored corporate plan will always be the least expensive way to go for the business owner. So if you're a small business owner out there and you have 10 employees and those 10 employees want you to pay them a stipend, and the average stipends range typically from $50 to $75 if a corporation were to pay for them. But a properly designed corporate plan, because of taking advantage of some of the corporate discounts for voice, for data, and for text, so all-encompassing services, you can get that below the $50 threshold that most companies would pay for a stipend. So it typically, from a pure financial perspective, is not in the company's best interest to relinquish control down to the employee level. Now, the other big thing out there, again, I'm speaking more from an employer perspective than an employee. Employees, they want to own the phone, and they want to own the phone number, and they have their own reasons for that, and I can touch on that if you like. But from an employer, another really important thing here is you want to control the asset, because when you control the asset, which is the phone, you control the phone number. And the reason that's important is, Rich, let's say you have a company and you have a sales or a service force who's out in front of customers all day. Well, the way things are today, people very frequently call people on their mobile phones. Most people, put their mobile phones numbers on their business cards. So if you're a technician, you're going out and meeting with somebody. Those people like to reach people immediately. They don't want to have to go, through the hassle of tracking somebody down, through the switchboard. And so what happens is, if that person leaves the company, let's face it, if you're 45 years old and you leave your employer, you're not going to go reinvent yourself. You're probably going to stay in the same industry. In fact, you're probably going to work for a competitor, whether you have a non-compete or not. So what can potentially happen is if a company relinquishes control of the phone number to the employee, then ultimately the employee might be in a position to take business from that employer. I have a client that I deal with that got burned on this. They had a top salesperson, and that salesperson left. And and let's face it, they were a great salesperson. So they have very, very strong ties and relationships with their clients. Their clients continued to call this gentleman, and he worked for another company. He ended up stealing about 20% of the company's revenue for them, which, by the way, could have saved the amount of revenue that they lost could have paid for their cellular bills for probably the next 30 years. So
wow.
you are susceptible if you go in that direction.